Hello, IB history scholars. It's Mr. Newcomb, and today I would like to continue our study on Adolf Hitler and more specifically look at the fall of the Third Reich. Now, by May of 1945, Nazi Germany has surrendered to the Allied forces, and so for all practical purposes, the Third Reich has collapsed. Now, what has gone into the collapse of the Third Reich? Well, there are some areas that we can look at: foreign policy, final solution, the Nazi economy, and a social revolution. In regards to foreign policy, Adolf Hitler really didn't have a precise foreign policy. You can find bits and pieces of his foreign policy in some previous documents, such as the 25-point program, Mein Kampf, the Zweites Buch, the four-year memorandum, as well as the Hassbach memorandum. All those give a little insight to his foreign policy, but overall his foreign policy is one in which he wanted to expand Germany, and he was very opportunistic about it. Now, in 1934, remember, he is beginning to really formulate his dictatorship, and so it's not really until about 1935-36 is he really going to begin to work on his foreign policy aims. Now, he will have some pretty remarkable success with foreign policy. The Anschluss with Austria, the taking over of Czechoslovakia, especially the Sudetenland, and then the invasion of Poland. So up to 39, he is going to have some success. Now, after 1939, it does seem to begin to unravel. And up to 1939, this idea of blitzkrieg was working. And so that tells us that Germany was really in a position to fight a short, very quick war and not really a long, drawn-out total war. One thing that would indicate about Germany's ability to continue to fight a long war is looking at their allies. Their allies were pretty weak, and there was tension amongst the various allies that Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany had. By 1942, Nazi Germany had overextended itself. Plus, he, in some ways, was restricting his generals because he was very much hands-on. And again, like I had mentioned, the economy itself may not have been geared towards a long, drawn-out war. So that's going to be problematic. And then the final solution is going to drain needed resources for the German army. And so ultimately, we look by 1945, the German army is pretty much spent. And so by May of 1945, the collapse occurs. Now, looking at the final solution, this was something that Hitler had mentioned, but really hadn't really defined what it was. We knew that Adolf Hitler was really targeting Jews as the scapegoat in Germany. And it really isn't until 1942 does he finally arrive at what is considered the final solution, which is really the extermination of the Jews. That's ultimately going to be named the Holocaust. Now, how does this contribute to his collapse? Again, the resources that are going to be used towards the final solution is going to drain away from their ability to fight a war. Plus, as this final solution is expanded to include people in other countries, it's going to bring more conflict to Germany. And so this becomes a problem. The Nazi economy itself, one could say, never really fully achieved autarky. Autarky is an idea of self-sufficiency. Germany was looking to be able to provide all its needed resources in order to really fight a total war. It failed to achieve autarky. Perhaps maybe they were able to fight a very short, quick war, blitzkrieg-type war. But as the war progressed, their ability to continue to fight and meet the production level of the Allies, they will struggle to do. And so the Nazi economy never really achieves that level to fight a long, drawn out war. Now, Albert Speer, who becomes the war minister to war production minister, he will do we could say, the best with what he has. But when we look at the production of it, he is relying on slave labor to try to keep the production levels. Not going to be able to have sustainable success as this war progresses. So the Nazi economy is going to work against Nazi Germany's success here if this war continues to go as long as it did. Now, this idea of a social revolution, it was more of a counter-revolution than a social revolution. It was a very negative and destructive movement. The revolution seemed to support more of a monopoly of the capitalists and military hierarchy than really helping the greater Germany here. Opposition, though, seemed to be very dormant in Germany. And when we look at if there were opposing forces in Germany to Adolf Hitler, it's really going to come from the right, and it's going to come from the military. So when we look back at Germany and was a social revolution ever really created, it fell very short in creating a social revolution. Now, was Adolf Hitler master of Nazi Germany? Historians, they like to debate this, and they like to put him either in a weak leader category or a strong leader category. And again, that might be extraordinary to think, because we sometimes think that Adolf Hitler is a complete totalitarian. Now, those historians that put him in a strong leader category tend to focus on a number of areas. They look at him having absolute control over the ideology, education, the economy, and the military. They also look at his lack of opposition that he has really after 1934. He was found able to get rid of all unions. He had control over the media. He had established a one-party state. He had control over the courts as well as the civil service. He had a very powerful security system that involved the police, the Gestapo, and the SS. And he had a far-reaching propaganda machine that involved the press, the radio, and all forms of art and culture. And so we sometimes say he created a cult of personality. Now, there are some historians that, again, like to consider him a weak leader, and they tend to focus on some areas that, such as his personality, that he was erratic, he was easily bored, and he was really uninterested in details. He opted out of some key government decisions. He set ministers against one another when they had overlapping duties. He allowed ministers as well as local officials to be able to come up with their own decisions, and sometimes they competed with each other. And so it created this permanent confusion over planning, which spreads into the war years as well. And one could say that the Nazi programs were pretty much left unfinished. Plans for economic recovery never really were carried out because of war, and the rearmament basically had begun to take away needed resources to really help rebuild Germany. And so those are reasons that would contribute to why he is a weak leader. Whatever type of leader that Adolf Hitler is, whether it's a strong or weak leader, Adolf Hitler definitely has left a mark, and one in which we will continue to analyze and debate for years to come.